Dude, the proof research is so cool, man.
Hey Matt.
What's up?
So I got a new gun and I keep missing with it.
You think it's you?
No, Clint taught me how to shoot, so I know it's not me.
Nah, it's definitely you then. I mean, sure, man. Let's talk about things that make your gun inaccurate. Hi everybody, welcome back to Classic Firearms, and it's Matt back today, and we are going to talk about what makes a rifle inaccurate, which is kind of just a negative way of saying what makes a rifle accurate. So there are large number of features on a rifle that make the accuracy, that affect the accuracy, but one of the first things I wanted to cover is the difference between two related terms and how they're kind of incorrectly used interchangeably. So we have accuracy and precision. So again, these are related concepts, but are technically different ideas. So accuracy is how close a given value is to the target value. So an example, if you hit your target, that's an expression of accuracy. If you're missing your target, in general, that's an expression of inaccuracy. Precision is how close values are to each other. So if you are, hitting 3 feet to the right, but every shot is landing on top of each other, that would be a precise firearm, even though it is not accurate. Now, both of these things are super important when it comes to your shooting, but I would say that typically I would prefer a rifle that was precise, because then we can work on the accuracy. Normally we can make some adjustments to things like the sights to bring it onto target. If a firearm is imprecise, there are certainly things we can try to make the precision higher. But if you are not able to get shots close to each other, then regardless of where they're hitting, it's going to be hard to make sure all your shots are hitting the target as intended, even if you were to therefore move it onto the target. So let's keep that in mind. Two different things, and we will try to hit which one of those things, each factor that we discuss is actually affecting while we go through. So we have here a proof research rifle, 300 Win Mag, and it has a phenomenal reputation for accuracy, being an accurate firearm. So we're going to use this kind of as our example so that we can point out to different factors that will affect the accuracy or inaccuracy of a given firearm. So the first thing I talk about, and what I think of as the very heart of the accuracy of a firearm, is the barrel. And there's a lot of factors that go into the barrel as far as components, like the actual composition of the barrel and the heat treating thereof. Because if you have a barrel that is made of like an inconsistent material, then heat will affect it differently. The vibration of a bullet going down the barrel will affect it differently at different points, and this could definitely throw off your rounds from the intended flight path. Also the heat treat, because again, if you have one part of the barrel that's harder as opposed to another, then this is going to cause problems with what we would call kind of like the barrel harmonics, the ability of the barrel to vibrate in a consistent sense so that the rounds are still following the same predicted flight path. The materials also are going to affect how much heat affects it, as well as things like the profile affecting how much heat and continued use affects it. A very thin barrel is going to heat up much faster, and you're going to get what we call barrel whip, where because hot barrels are more flexible, you'll actually see the tip of the barrel start doing this, and that can typically lead to what we call vertical stringing, where you have shots that are windage-wise still centered on the target, but they start going above and below the target, depending on where the barrel is when the bullet exits. So you'll end up with a line vertically through the target. So that's profile, and again, things like the construction. Certain materials are able to sustain heat or pressures better, so it doesn't heat up as quickly. The actual just materials and treatment of the barrel itself is very important. Kind of moving from the back to the muzzle. So the chamber needs to be cut correctly to spec for the caliber, and it needs to be in line with the axis of the bore. Sometimes you might have chambers that are actually at an angle to the bore, or they're parallel to the bore but offset in some way. And what that's going to do is the bullet's going to enter the bore at the barrel at an angle, and so it's already going to start yaw. Yaw is basically when something kind of tumbles in a horizontal sense. So the bullet will be going down the barrel and it will already have yaw introduced to it. So when it comes out, it will not be going in a straight parallel to the bore axis sort of direction. Moving forward slightly, between the chamber and the rifling is the throat. So typically we expect that for the throat area, we want the front of the bullet to be just shy of the rifling, or basically almost in contact. Now that does vary depending on a number of factors. As a great example, we commonly compare 223 and 556. So 556 has a longer throat than 223, and part of the reason for that is they wanted it to be reliable running in a lot of different adverse conditions because it was a military caliber versus the throat of a 223 being a sporting firearm was shorter. They wanted to make sure that the bullet engaged that rifling a little bit quicker to have a better downrange accuracy effect. But again, there's such a thing as too little throat. If you are cramming the bullet into the rifling as you close the chamber, that is not going to actually be good for your accuracy either. Kind of moving forward to the bore itself, one thing that a lot of people don't think about is the fact that the bore needs to be machined in a straight fashion. This was kind of a concern, for instance, with cheap kind of AKs that were kind of around, say like the 90s. You would actually have the inside of the barrel look almost like a curve because they were trying to come in from both ends, or when they would heat treat the barrels, they would be hanging. And the outside of the barrel looked straight, but the inside was actually curved. And of course, when you fire the round, it's going to curve off one direction or another because the actual muzzle is angled in a fashion. So that's something to keep in mind. A quality barrel that has a kind of straight bore. The rifling itself needs to be well machined, and the insides finished to a fairly smooth degree. Some studies have actually shown that if it's too smooth, it can actually cause additional buildup of fouling. But certainly, if it's too rough and inconsistent in the rifling, then that is going to have a negative effect on accuracy. It's one of the reasons, for instance, people prefer hammer forged barrels over, say, a button rifled barrel. Button rifling, just briefly, is when they actually take a carbide bit and they push it down a smooth barrel, and that's what digs the rifling into the sides. But the problem is, since you're just pushing a bit and it's kind of scraping along, it can lead to some inconsistencies in the rifling, as opposed to when you take a barrel blank, you insert a mandrel, which is a rod with the rifling raised on the outside, and then hammers come down and squeeze it onto the mandrel. That is a hammer forged barrel, and so the rifling would be much more consistent. One of the reasons why that's considered a higher quality barrel. Kind of reaching toward the end, the muzzle of the firearm. So first off, we want to make sure that there's often a taper in the bore. So at one end or the other, it is going to be a larger diameter. We would prefer, if possible, that the larger diameter be toward the chamber, because otherwise it squeezes the bullet down. There's a word called swaging, meaning it squeezes it down to a smaller diameter at the narrow end, and then it actually loses contact with the rifling if the muzzle end is larger. So if possible, the barrel manufacturer should manufacture the barrel where there is a larger end toward the chamber. And then also the crown is very important at the muzzle end, because the crown is the last kind of part of the barrel where the gases are escaping around the bullet as it exits. So if we have a well-cut crown, then the gas escapes around the projectile in an even fashion, and it maintains the trajectory of the bullet. However, if it is poorly crowned, if there's damage to the crown, the gas may escape to one side or another, which will actually act to push the bullet off of that intended flight path. So yeah, the barrel is, again, pretty much the heart of accuracy / precision on any firearm. And so that is going to have probably the largest number of factors when it comes to whether your rifle's inaccurate. The next thing I would say is actually the ammunition. So ammunition, while not technically part of the rifle itself, is probably the next largest contributor toward its accuracy and precision. So of course, you want consistent ammunition. So part of the issue when people talk about buying cheap ammunition and why it's bad is that it can be incredibly inconsistent. You'll have different chamber pressures, different velocities. Bullet weights might not even be really consistent. If you weigh the bullets, you might find out that there's a large variance in the weight, even though there's one advertised bullet weight. And all of these things are going to have an impact on how it actually impacts the target downrange. So you can have your best rifle setup ever, but if you're using ammunition that, again, the weight changes, the velocity changes, you're not going to be able to put every round on top of each other, simply due to there being an uneven effect on the projectile from different velocities and things. So probably the second most leading cause of loss of accuracy is making sure that you're using a good quality and consistent ammunition. Now, kind of following that up, we're going to move back into the rifle itself. So we have how the action of the rifle interacts with the stock, like the bedding of the action and the interaction between the barrel and the receiver, the action of the rifle. So of course, most barrels, when you're looking at something like this bolt action, are threaded into the receiver. And so you want to make sure that the threads are cut perpendicular to the axis of the bore, and that the shoulder against which you're going to tighten it to, so the barrel has a shoulder that will tighten all the way up to the front of the receiver. The receiver and the shoulder have to be square to each other so that they meet evenly. Otherwise, the barrel may not actually be pointed true to the rest of the rifle. Then for the action, it needs to be bedded correctly into the stock. That gives it proper support and allows us to make sure that there's nothing that's touching the rest of the barrel. We call that free floating, where nothing else is going to be pushing on the barrel. That's important because, again, as the barrels heat up, they are going to change. Things that heat up can swell, they get larger, and so if there's anything that's touching the barrel at a different place, as it goes to expand under heat, it's going to change how it's pressing against the barrel. You're going to end up, with something that presses more due to the barrel expanding, and that can actually throw off the accuracy or precision of the firearm. It's going to shift the point of impact. In a pistol or something very similar to bedding of an action would be like the tolerance between the slide and the frame of the pistol. So of course, in a handgun, all of the actions of firing the round basically take place in the slide of a semi-automatic pistol. And so, you've got a similar idea to the bedding of a bolt action rifle in kind of the tolerance between the slide and the frame, where one is moving on the other, and there needs to be a tight tolerance to make sure that it's acting consistently. Moving forward, we also have considerations like the muzzle device. So if you are going to add a muzzle device, bear in mind that may very well shift your point of impact. Silencers are especially known for that, but even adding something like a muzzle brake can shift your point of impact, which again is kind of an impact in the accuracy, but not the precision, right? If it shifts the point of impact, but everything is still landing in the same place, the rifle is just as precise. And then hopefully we can make an adjustment to correct the accuracy. One thing about iron sights or magnified optics or red dots is that they all come with some built-in adjustability when it comes to things like rifle optics. Sometimes handguns are non-adjustable sights, but just about every rifle, sighting system is going to have some adjustability, but there's a limit. So, if you have a poorly made barrel that does have that kind of internal curve to the bore, you may see that it's a very precise rifle. All the rounds fall on top of each other, but you simply don't have enough adjustment room in your sighting system to be able to correct it to be on target, and therefore you can't make it an accurate rifle. In this case, we have these large turrets, so we can certainly have a lot of adjustment room. And if we found that we changed loads and there was a shift in point of impact, the rifle is still acting precise, but we can get it back on target and correct the accuracy with the adjustments. And then there's practical considerations that aren't inherent to the firearm itself. Caliber that you choose. While the caliber doesn't specifically necessarily affect accuracy per se, it can do things like limit how many options you have for loads. So you may find that for your rifle, you need a specific load, a specific bullet weight, and it may be harder to find that load depending on the available options for your caliber. Great example, if you go to something like 7.62 by 39, there aren't as many load options as there are for a more domestically produced caliber, like say 308. There are hundreds of options for 308 loads, and there just aren't as many options for something like 7.62 by 39. So you can really dial in a 308 rifle to find the right load that best meets your rifle's preferences to be the most accurate and precise firearm it can be. If your AK does not like the available 7.62 by 39, it's unlikely that there's a lot of other options to choose from. Again, with caliber, sometimes rounds that are flatter trajectory, so they stay in a lower arc during their travels for longer, they can be easier for us to shoot. They're not technically more accurate or precise per se, but it makes it easier for us to adjust to hit the target because it's traveling in a flatter trajectory. Something that goes and it drops very fast quickly. When we try to reach out to another target and make adjustments, it can be more challenging because of how much it drops at a given distance. Something like a 30-40 Krag is a great round, but on the other hand, it is known that once you reach a certain distance, it's going to drop pretty quickly. And so again, you might reach the maximum adjustment on your optic, or if you are trying to judge distance and kind of do a Kentucky windage holdover, it can be really hard to be able to accurately hold your rifle at the correct place to hit that target. So even though those things are not mechanical issues per se, they affect the kind of practical accuracy you can achieve as a shooter. Stocks can affect practical accuracy because it's our way of interacting with the firearm. And so, the stock has to be fitted well to the action. It should also be fitted well to the shooter. If you have to crane your head into an uncomfortable position or an unnatural position, it's going to be harder for you to be able to hold the rifle and achieve those accurate results. Things like a more vertical pistol grip on this rifle stock can allow us to achieve a more natural position with our hand so that we can hold it easier for longer without experiencing strain in our body. The trigger obviously is very important because, again, it is our primary way of interacting with the fireman actually getting the shot off, right? So if it's too heavy and you're having to pull very hard, then maybe you are going to pull yourself off of target. If it's too light, then there's also the possibility that before you've really settled on your target, you could accidentally shoot the firearm. So we want a trigger that is matched to what we're doing, right? You typically see, for instance, something like a duty firearm have a heavier trigger and a precision firearm have a lighter trigger, because we want to be able to easily, without any kind of disturbance to our point of aim, pull that trigger and get that shot off. One thing I do think is kind of interesting is that unless you're talking about repeated shots, where you're trying to do follow-up shots, the action of the firearm should not have a huge effect on accuracy, because say you have a semi-automatic firearm, obviously there are going to be internal components that move, but when you pull the trigger, nothing's moving until after the bullet's left. So if you've done your job of properly aiming the firearm and the barrel, the muzzle, the stock, the trigger, all of these things so far have been interacting to get an accurate shot, then the fact that there are moving components, none of that moves until after the bullet has left the muzzle. So, sometimes people think of bolt actions as inherently more accurate. I don't know that I would agree with that, because again, the bullet is on its way before any of those things actually move. Now, again, sometimes it can be easier to practically achieve accuracy with something like a bolt action, and that's because of our interaction with the system. Especially, like I said, if you're trying to fire a shot and then fire a follow-up shot, it may be that you haven't completely settled back down. You're trying to fire, it recoils, it comes back down, and as it's coming down, you're not in a stationary, stable firing position before you pull the trigger again. But yeah, all of these things are factors. The biggest factor that's going to affect the accuracy of any firearm is you or me, the shooter. Obviously, we have to do our job when it comes to correctly sighting the firearm in, as far as breathing, trigger pull, proper holding of the firearm, and techniques to manage recoil when we're going to take another shot. All of those things are up to us, and our ability to manipulate the firearm to do what we want it to do, to put it on target. And I've often said before that when people talk about that the AK is less accurate from an AR-15, for instance, that the AK may be in less accurate firearm than the AR-15, but it is still more accurate than 90% of shooters out there. If you were to test the rifle in a vacuum, the accuracy is still well above what the typical shooter can achieve with it. And so it's not that it's the gun's fault. We have to take ownership. Poor craftsman blames his tools. The firearm is likely not the problem. Although, again, if you run into an issue where you are having problems, you are not getting all your rounds onto target where you want it to, definitely take a moment and think about, okay, are we experiencing an issue with precision where the rounds are more spread out, they're not close to each other, or accuracy where the rounds are not centered on target? If it is an issue of accuracy, all the rounds are close together but just moved off of target, then typically we can expect that we can make an adjustment to our sights. Maybe you can experiment with something like your muzzle brake, because that may be throwing it off. We could try a different load and see if that shifts the point of impact closer to the target. But if the issue is that the rifle is inaccurate, you're seeing shots go everywhere, then I would say the primary thing I would look at is my job as a shooter. Am I doing my job? Am I able to manipulate the firearm well? Does the stock work? Are there anything loose? Are sight scope mounts, scopes, the action in the stock, are any of these things loose that's causing a randomness to be introduced? Before I thought about the fact that it also could be something like a barrel that has imperfections in it. But certainly there are going to be times where you possibly could get a bad barrel, and then that can be replaced, and maybe that fixes the problem. Well, guys, I think that's about everything I had as far as precision versus accuracy and what kind of factors go into it. Of course, when it comes to this kind of topic, the issue is everything, right? Everything affects precision accuracy because all of these parts interact with each other. And of course, one of the biggest parts is yourself as the shooter interacting with this system. So, certainly there are things that I may have kind of spent a very short period of time on, or maybe even missed. If there's anything you'd like to contribute to the conversation about what affects accuracy or inaccuracy, precision or imprecision, feel free to comment down below. But that's a rundown of the largest factors, in my opinion, on what affects rifle accuracy. And don't forget, we do have a giveaway going on. If you would like to be the lucky winner, take home a SCAR 20S. This fantastic firearm is our current giveaway. Channel 308. Of course, it has the Loophole 3.6 to 18 power scope. It's got an Accutech bipod, and it is a SCAR 20S. It is a fantastically cool firearm. So it's got a really cool Surefire muzzle brake, and I mean, it's really just an awesome package. One lucky person is going to be able to take home completely free. All you have to do is go to the contest. There's tons of ways to enter. My favorite is always going to be that you can refer your friends. Every friend you refer is going to get you a couple hundred entries. Also, you have our secret word, precise. So this is a example of a precision rifle. Even though it is semi-automatic, you can go and enter the word precise for, again, you can get a couple hundred extra entries. Some of those things are repeatable every day, so just keep coming back and increase your chance of winning. Well, folks, again, we definitely